Hey, seventh graders, this will be part one of a discussion on rebuilding the Union. At this point in the story, as we've been following it, we've seen General Robert E. Lee's surrender, the end of the Civil War, and the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. The South is in shambles, and the North isn't in great shape either. Your assignment for this video is similar to the last. Watch for clues to answer the quiz questions. Then after the video, complete the Freedmen worksheet. After the Civil War, Pennsylvania Congressman Thaddeus Stevens became a leader of the Radical Republicans. This group of congressmen favored using federal power to create a new order in the South and to promote full citizenship for freed African Americans. Stevens stated that the whole, quote, the whole fabric of Southern society must change. In this section, we'll learn how political leaders battled over how to bring the southern states back into the Union. After the Civil War ended in 1865, the South faced the challenge of building a new society not based on slavery. The process the federal government used to readmit the Confederate States to the Union is known as Reconstruction. Reconstruction lasted from 1865 to 1877. In his second inaugural address in March 1865, Lincoln promised to reunify the nation, quote, with malice toward none, with charity for all. Malice means harm. Lincoln's plan included pardoning Confederate officials. It also called for allowing the Confederate States to quickly form new governments and send representatives to Congress. To assist former slaves, the president established the Freedmen's Bureau. This federal agency set up schools and hospitals for African Americans and distributed clothes, food, and fuel throughout the South. When Lincoln was killed in April 1865, Vice President Andrew Johnson became president. Johnson was a Democrat. The Republicans had put him on the ticket in 1864 to help win support in the nation's border states. Johnson was a former slaveholder and, unlike Lincoln, a stubborn, unyielding man. Johnson believed that Reconstruction was the job of the president, not Congress. His policies were based on Lincoln's goals. He insisted that the new state governments ratify the 13th Amendment, which prohibited slavery. He also insisted that they accept the supreme power of the federal government. Johnson offered amnesty, or official pardon, to most white Southerners. He promised to return their property. In return, they had to pledge loyalty to the United States. At first, the large plantation owners, top military officers, and ex-Confederate leaders were not included in this offer, but they too eventually won amnesty. As the southern states rebuilt, they set up new state governments that seemed very much like the old ones. Some states flatly refused to ratify the 13th Amendment. This is a white man's government, said the governor of South Carolina, and intended for white men only. The southern states passed laws known as black codes, which limited the freedom of former slaves. In Mississippi, for instance, one law said that African Americans had to have written proof of employment. Anyone without such proof could be put to work on a plantation. African Americans were forbidden to meet in unsupervised groups or carry guns. Because of such laws, many people in the North suspected that white Southerners were trying to bring back the old South. When Congress met in December 1865, its members refused to seat representatives from the South. Many of these Southern representatives had been Confederate leaders only months before. Under the Constitution, Congress has the right to decide whether its members are qualified to hold office. So instead of admitting the Southerners, Congress set up a committee to study conditions in the South and decide whether the Southern states should be represented. By taking such action, Congress let the president know that it planned to play a role in Reconstruction. Republicans outnumbered Democrats in both houses of Congress. Most Republicans were moderates who believed that the federal government should stay out of the affairs of individuals in the states. The radical Republicans, however, wanted the federal government to play an active role in remaking Southern politics and society. Led by Thaddeus Stevens and Massachusetts Senator Charles Sumner, the group also demanded full and equal citizenship for African Americans. Their aim was to destroy the South's old ruling class and turn the region into a place of small farms, free schools, respect for labor, and political equality for all citizens. Urged on by the radicals, Congress passed a bill promoting civil rights, those rights granted to all citizens. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 declared that all persons born in the United States, except Native Americans, were citizens. It also stated that all citizens were entitled to equal rights regardless of their race. Republicans were shocked when President Johnson vetoed the bill. Johnson argued that federal protection of civil rights would lead towards centralization of the national government. He also insisted that making African Americans full citizens would, quote, operate against the white race. Congress voted to override Johnson's veto. That is, 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate voted for the bill after the president's veto, and the bill became law. This concludes part 1 of Rebuilding the Union. Please make sure you have completed the video quiz for part 1 and the Freedmen worksheet.